Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, presented to you by the SAP Customer Experience Group. This is the sixth webinar in the current series about upgrading to SAP BusinessObjects BI 4.1. My name is Adrian Paul from the SAP Customer Experience Group, and today's webinar is entitled BI 4.1 User Authentication and Single Sign-On, and will be presented to you by my SAP colleague Tim Zimber, who is a senior engineer and an authentication specialist at SAP. So the list of all the webinars in this series has been published in SCN, and you may have seen this SCN page already, which contains the full webinar calendar. Now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce you to Tim Zimber, who will begin the main webinar presentation.
Thanks, Adrian. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, can hear you. Fine.
All right. So today we're going to talk about the options for authentication with BI. Authentication will be what we talk about integrating external directories. We'll be talking about SSO or single sign-on, automatically logging into the product, and just sharing what we can do with the current BI4 offering and some things that are on the roadmap. The following major logon methods that are supported, we have Enterprise, LDAP, AD, and SAP. So if you launch any of your BI applications, BI Launchpad, Open Document, you're going to typically have these types of authentications available. The Enterprise is an accounts database built into the BI system where you can basically manage any account you want, create any account you want. LDAP we use to integrate with customers that are using LDAP servers as their primary accounts database, or a lot of times it's used for customers that are running on a Unix or Linux platform. Windows AD is by far our most popular authentication, and we achieve that through Kerberos, and we also have a plugin for single sign-on built in with that. That's very popular. Previously known as Vintella, currently known as Java SSO. The server can run on any platform, the web server can, but the CMS, in order to use the AD plugin, must be residing on a Windows box. As of SP5, we're working on a new solution that will allow us, it's actually not a new solution, but we're working on getting it certified, that will allow us to perform SSO when the CMS is on Linux or Unix as well. And basically it's going to combine this plugin plus Trusted Auth and the LDAP plugin together. In LDAP, SSO is supported by Trusted Authentication. We'll talk about that some more, and that's basically a way of integrating our product with virtually any other product out there. We just ask that the other product sends us a username in various places, and we pick up the username and log people in. We trust that you've already authenticated the user, so that's kind of a little play on the words, Trusted Authentication. When you're dealing with SAP, if we're working with any of our BW products, there's an accounts database in there, and we can log users in with SSO using logon tickets. So if you have NetWeaver Enterprise Portal or CRM, something based off of the NetWeaver platform that can create logon tickets, the My SAP SSO 2 tickets, we can log you into our product seamlessly, as long provided that the user is mapped in from a back-end SAP system. All right. Most popular, again, I mentioned, was the Kerberos single sign-on, and that's because just about every customer we have probably has some type of Active Directory in their environment. They come into work, you log into your workstation with Windows AD, and our job is to be able to get those credentials into our BI system. We can do it in two different ways. You can either set it so the user has to retype their credentials into the logon screen, or we use single sign-on. And single sign-on is very popular. So you come in, you log into your desktop, and you hit single sign-on, and you get into OpenDoc, you get into Launchpad, you can launch your analysis for Office, your Live Office, your Quaz, whatever tool you have. Most of our tools have some level of integration with the AD SSO. There's only a couple of them that don't. And some of the benefits when you're using the AD SSO is we can then take those credentials and we can also forward them on to an Active Directory integrated database in some cases. This is popular if you've integrated your HANA platform with Active Directory, and then it's also used with SQL and SQL analysis. But there's quite a few limitations on the SSO, the database. We don't support all of our databases with it currently. And because it's an on-demand single sign-on technology, scheduling will not carry a ticket forward. We're working on some solutions, some possible solutions for that right now, actually. It's not possible to set up SSO for offline scheduling because if you schedule a report and it runs and you're not logged in, your credentials can't be verified at that time. The CMS and processing servers must be on Windows. So again, the same requirement we have for the AD plugin we have for SSO, the database. View time refresh will perform AD SSO on some supported DBs. Down here we have a couple of knowledge base articles that are in this presentation you can access later. The 163.1734 is the primary article for setting up both manual and single sign-on with Active Directory on all the BI4 platforms. The 186.9952 goes into our SSO database options for Kerberos. It explains the limitations, the requirements, and points you to the other documentation if you're using analysis, SQL, or HANA. So let's move over to LDAP. So front-end SSO with LDAP can be attained using trusted authentication. We used to have, and we still have it in our product, but it's slated to be removed, a Siteminder plugin. The Siteminder plugin has not been developed for quite a few years. It actually just got brought over with XIR2, and it's very limited, and it's run into a lot of issues in 4.0. So the direction for our development is to use trusted auth because it's not a specific authentication for one type of third party. It doesn't work just with Siteminder. It will work with virtually any product you can throw at it. In trusted auth, the users cannot be forwarded to a database as of yet, but the solution we're working on might allow some variation of that, and which is called secondary credentials, or a mix of SAP. All right, so secondary credentials, as we were talking about, or a mix of SAP SSO methods for data access. One of the other trusted auth methods of getting in is the enterprise portal. So if you're logging in from an SAP product, it essentially uses the same method as trusted auth, but it's more integrated with our product because of how well we're integrated with BW. So we can actually log you into a database if your database is BW, and we're actually going to talk about this with HANA. HANA has the same options as well. Okay, web services is a little bit different from our front end setting up things with BI Launchpad. Web services SSO for Active Directory is required to enable the following clients. So BI Launchpad is just a web app, and so is OpenDocument. But when you're using web services, you can actually allow your client tools to single sign on as well. We have Live Office, Query as a web service known as Quaz, BI widgets, Crystal Reports for Enterprise. That's the new CR4E that was released in 4.0, not the old Crystal 2011. Dashboard Designer, Analysis for Office, and Design Studio. There probably is more on this list as products are plugged into the BI suite, and most of them can follow. Any product that is plugged into the suite that uses web services will typically be able to take advantage of the Kerberos SSO. And we have a knowledge base article for this, 16469, and essentially you just take usually your SSO options from BI Launchpad and apply them to the web services. The fields are slightly different. It uses a configuration more similar to the 3.1 days, but it works the same way. It requires the same values. You need a service account, a principal, a realm, and passwords, and you're able to get in.
Tim, we have a question from John Clark asking, does the Web Services SSO apply to Webby Rich Client also?
No. Webby Rich Client does not connect through the Web Services URL. It either connects directly to CMS to log in, and in that case, I believe you can just not enter your credentials and hit log on, and it will take your OS credentials. If you're using it in 3-tier with the HTTP URL, that's not the same URL as web services, and I don't believe we have a single sign-on option for that URL yet. We haven't had a lot of customers asking for the 3-tier SSO. We had it was more popular back in XR2, but as currently right now, we don't have a lot of customers using the 3-tier approach. So if they do want to log into a Webby Rich Client with Active Directory automatically, and you have AD enabled, you just have your CMS name and your authentication type set to AD, and you hit the log on button. So you don't actually need the web services piece. Okay, so leaving the Kerberos realm for a little while, we'll get back to trusted authentication. And with BI's native enterprise authentication, it is possible to enable trusted auth. It's very easy to enable trusted auth. It's just a little checkbox on the enterprise plugin. Trusted authentication BI is trusting the application server to perform the authentication. When we say the application server, what happens when you normally authenticate to BI, you give the product a username and a password. If you're authenticating to a third party like Active Directory or LDAP, you give the Active Directory or the LDAP a username or a password. When you're using trusted auth, we give the product a username and we give it a shared secret, which works as the password. So instead of requiring the user's password to be passed to BO or to be decrypted by BO, we simply trust the web app. So if the web app sends us a username with a shared secret, we trust that user is a valid user to get in. So you have to set up all your security and your authentication in front of the web app. And you can use any products you want. I mean, a very popular one is people will use Siteminder. We'll pick up the SM user from Siteminder, and they can lock it down to a particular web app. You can set up SSL so nobody can see what's being transmitted. And when our product picks up the SM user, we'll log them in, and we'll go and look up in our directory. The SM user could match an Active Directory user, it could match an LDAP user, and it could even match an enterprise user if you just want to create an enterprise user. And you can have your inside the BI system be any one of any number of the aliases, even a combination. All our product really cares about is that the user exists. So we trust that all the authentication is performed outside of us. This allows most other external authentication methods to be used, things like X509, SAML, Secure ID. We've had a lot of customers ask that we integrate our product with their RSA cards, and we don't have a huge reason to do this. We would trust that you go and log into your own environment with your RSA cards and get all logged in the way you do. And then when you access us, you can either, if you're logged in with Active Directory, you can either use AD SSO or you could use Trusted Auth to pass the username and shared secret to us after you've already gone through your external process. So in order to get to the point where you're even allowed to send your username to us, you have to have passed your external authentication process, and then we just log that user in as whatever you say it is. It's important to note that none of our desktop client tools support Trusted Auth, So one of the big limitations with Trusted Auth is it's a web application thing only, and it can only be applied to BI Launchpad and OpenDoc for the most part. You can't, even web services, because it deals with client tools, cannot implement trusted authentication unless it's done through the SDK. So if you're writing some type of SDK code, but our regular clients, Live Office, A-Office, Quaz, can't make use of it at this time, and I don't believe there's any plan to change that.
Tim, we're having a few questions come in, but I think perhaps better we can wait till the Q&A section at the end.
Okay.
Or would you like to take one of those right now?
That's fine. We're about 20 minutes in and about halfway through, so yeah, we can take them if you want.
So a question from Prakatoma. Can we decentralize BI and CMC authorization screen for filter-based SSO trust authorization on Tomcat? What I mean is, can we keep the login custom window only for BI and not for CMC?
Well, the CMC doesn't have any real single sign-on options for it. It's considered an admin tool. So, and as far as the BI Launchpad is concerned, for the most part, the customization is limited. I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
Perhaps Prakar can elaborate on that, and we'll get to that later. And a
Okay.
question from AJ Gupta. We're having issues using SSO bypass login after upgrading our XI 3.1 to SP7. Have you heard of this issue?
We are having issues with
Bypassing login after upgrading our XI 3.1 to SP7. Have you heard of this issue?
when they mean bypassing login. They're using the logon no SSO.jsp, the next line.
Oh no, that's
and no, not in SP7. We haven't heard anything. We had some issues with logon no SSO on 4.1, and we had some issues on 5.4 as far as re-logging in once you logged out. But as far as I know, I haven't had any major reported issues on SP7 at all.
okay.
So you'd have to check that with support.
Okay, guess we can proceed with the webinar now. Thank you.
No problem. All right, so we're going into trusted authentication a little bit here. There's a number of ways to pass the user information. We have web session, HTTP header. That's probably our most popular, where the HTTP header contains a parameter that has the username, and we use that parameter to log them in. Web session is used very rarely, so is user principal. Remote user is actually a very popular method because that will pick up your Active Directory credentials. A lot of customers used to use this parameter, and they would put something like IIS and Jakarta in front of our product. But IIS and Jakarta are no longer needed. They were because they're not our products, they weren't ever really supported by SAP. But we've actually figured out an easier way to perform the same function. We have a bunch of KBAs out there called Unix SSO. We're working on getting those solutions added on 4.1 SP5. We also have a cookie method, but it's not recommended because the cookie could be insecure. It could be passed from user to user, and it's far harder to secure it. And we have the URL query where we actually put the username in the URL, and for obvious reasons that's not secure either. We typically use that method just to test Trusted Auth to make sure it works. Another option that was added in 4.0 was the ability to bind an incoming user ID to an existing user in the BI system. So if your user ID is user A, but in the BI system you have user B, and you want user B logged in with user A, so in other words, the user accounts do not match, we can set up a parameter in Trusted Auth that will allow the first login will be manual. So once you go through your external authentication, you pass user A to us, you're prompted with a logon screen, and then we'll go and attach that user to whatever you log in with. So then at that point, you log in manually with SAP, LDAP, AD, it doesn't matter, and we attach that those two accounts together. So from now on, when the Trusted Auth passes user A, user B gets logged into our system. And like I say, remember that you are trusting the application server, so you must secure it. So if you're worried about security, which is a very valid concern with Trusted Auth, it was designed for compatibility, not security. Any securing this to make sure that nobody can hack into it or bypass it is going to have to be done on the client side. You're going to need to have your web servers running SSL. You may want to do some type of IP restrictions, and just make sure that your authentication is secure in front of the web app. Okay. Semantic layer connectivity. Kerberos SSO to SQL, Oracle, and HANA using the UMX. We have the ability to pass our AD credentials. If you're logged in as an AD user, we can also pass those credentials to a SQL server, an Oracle server, or SAP HANA. The easiest to accomplish this with is SAP HANA, because SAP documents both ends of the equation. We have the BI stuff documented, and the SAP HANA, which is also our product, is documented, and we handle the process from end to end. So it's probably easiest to implement. The SQL server, which would also include analysis, it can get quite difficult because there's a lot of configuration options that have to be set up on Microsoft and in which is IIS, SQL, depending on which server you're going to, and all those settings are outside of our product, and you have to depend on having that set up first to have us be able to delegate to you. The Oracle DB, we've supported it for many years, and I think I've only seen one customer ever use it. I think, again, it depends on Oracle being properly integrated with Microsoft in order for us to be able to delegate our credentials to it, and I just doesn't seem to come up very often. Other semantic layer connectivity we have is STS, Security Token Service. This allows us to do SSO to all of our BW systems, and we still use SNC if you're using legacy reporting. So if you migrated some UNV universes or Crystal Reports 2011, those are still going to use SNC. STS is for all of our new applications, such as the BIX, the UNX universe, and the Crystal for Enterprise. Dashboards, anything that's new as a 4.0, and all of our legacy products will use SNC. And we put a list of the clients down there, Crystal Webby Dashboards, Explorer, and OLAP Analysis.
Tim, another question from Soho.
Please
can you provide details on SSO performance with Windows AD Kerberos Authentication on Tomcat? We are having performance issues in BI4.1 SP04, where an SSO takes 20 seconds to log in, and we found the Vintela servlet taking 10 to 15 seconds to process the request.
Sure, that's an easy one. So SSO, for the most part, all the product does is it puts up a forward challenge, which throws the entire process at that point onto Microsoft. Microsoft has to receive the URL from a browser. The browser has to negotiate and pull some tickets from Microsoft, and then once the negotiation is over, the user is logged into us. Now, if you have any problems in your Microsoft, such as DNS, such as too heavy of a load on your domain controllers, or even anything that's slowing down your network, you're susceptible to delays on those external products. As far as BI is concerned, as long as everything goes through that external process quickly, which in most cases it does, we'll log you in just as fast as Enterprise or LDAP or anything. So when you have a problem like that, we'll attempt to help. There's things that can be done, like looking at your packet scans and stuff. We've even had some issues where we've pulled in the developers for the Java SSO, which used to be Quest. It's now owned by Dell. And we can usually point people in a direction to where their problems are coming from, but we don't necessarily know what's going to cause it. We don't usually have very many performance problems. I mean, for a solution that thousands of our customers are using, SSO performance problems are extremely rare. And they almost always have to do with some type of issue going on in the customer's Active Directory. We usually see them with customers that have very, very large distributed Active Directory structure. For the most part, Intel is pretty efficient. All right. Let me see if I can finish this. So we talked about STS, SNC, stored credentials. Our product has the ability to store database credentials. This is a feature that was requested way back on XAR2, but has never really developed it to a lot and hasn't been used a lot because the management of those credentials has been difficult. Either you have to manage them in the CMC, or you have to have whatever the users log in manually, and it'll auto-populate them but with what you logged in manually with. But sometimes that doesn't match what you want to send to your database. So we're looking for an enhancement in 4.1 to allow these stored credentials to be managed through BI Launchpad. And at that point, no matter what your database, as long as the user is aware of his database username and password, they can go into hopefully the InfoView properties and store their credential, and then when they access reports based off of stored database credentials, the valid credentials will be sent. This is probably mostly a solution for Webby. We have other solutions that we can use for Crystal and stuff like that, but Crystal can make use of it as well, and most of our applications that work off of a universe or anything like that should be able to take advantage of that. So we're hoping to make an enhancement on SP5. We've got a couple of customers pushing for that. Applicable clients, Crystal Reports 2011 and Web Intents. Okay, I guess I already said that. Propagating additional security. So we leverage information from your IDP, like region, department, and apply it to universe security. Full overview is here. Import name, email address, and other attributes. One of the things that you can do with our external directories is, instead of just pulling in the username, you can also pull in additional information, such as the full name, the email address, and other attributes. And then you can even add this little highlighted section over here on the right. You can even add attributes to what we currently set. So right now we have about 3, I think: name, email, and if you wanted to have, if you had some other attribute for your client, you could have that brought in. And for the most part, I don't know that our regular products are going to access those as new attributes. It's something that you can query on, you can use with the SDK development. It's just a way that we can be more flexible with the accounts that we map into our system. BI Mobile. Now, BI Mobile released some documentation that they're going to be supporting some of our SSO methods, but so far our attempts to work with development on making those methods work has been limited to the cached username and password. So essentially, when you're using a BI Mobile application, you have to cache your username and password, and then the mobile application can reuse it when you authenticate to BI. The hope in the future is that if you have Trusted Auth set up in BI, that the BI mobile application can also log in with the same parameter for Trusted Auth. We also want to be able to pass the my SAP SSO 2 tokens and any other method for Trusted Auth that's currently available. The Kerberos option is probably never going to be developed onto the BI mobile application because most mobile devices aren't logged into Active Directory. But you never know. I mean, there could be some other ways that it gets accomplished. That's all we got currently for BI Mobile. And so let's go to SAP HANA. So HANA has quite a few options for a reasonably new product. If you're running on BI or any other operating system, Windows, Linux, log on, BI Launchpad, and anyway, SSO manual, you can set up SSO at view time using SAML SSO to HANA. SAML is certificate-based SSO. It's very, very similar to the SES that we can do with BW. If you're running on Windows, In addition to the SAML SSO, if you log into the BI portal with Active Directory, you can integrate HANA, and you can also log into HANA with Active Directory using Kerberos. The problem with that is you still do not have any scheduling option because, again, it's an on-demand technology. With SAML, you can schedule and do anything you want. So I see SAML becoming a predominant SSO technology when working with HANA. If you're running BI on SUSE 11 Linux, they've actually configured basically it's an OS to OS. As long as BI and HANA are on the same SUSE 11, we have an LDAP Kerberos option for connectivity. I still have not seen a customer implement the solution. It's documented in our admin guide, and it's the only LDAP SSO solution other than the database credentials that's ever been available. But again, the requirements are going to be that it has to be HANA. Both HANA and BI have to be on SUSE 11, and both servers have to be fully integrated with AD, and then you should be able to take advantage of this solution. So I don't see this becoming very popular, being that it's an OS dependent, an OS version dependent solution. But it could, maybe another variation of it might come out in a future product that will make it more widely spread, like if you could use it from Unix to Unix or something like that. Any and all platform clients set up database credentials for DirectDB exposed through the CMC, can also be scripted, and that's the database user and password that we were just talking about. Okay. So reporting on HANA client and connectivity options using Kerberos. So this document here shows the HANA database, and we connect to it through Java and ODBC. All these applications, Crystal 2011, Crystal Reports for Enterprise, Dashboards, Webby, Explorer, anything based off of the UNX can connect to HANA with SSO Kerberos. Again, all the requirements are still there. You have to have HANA integrated, you have to have BO integrated, you can't schedule anything, and so the HANA summary is that we support all the following applications: internal, external, and SAML. So Analysis Edition for OLAP has not made the Kerberos integration, again, I don't think yet. So the only way, so again, for the most part, despite the fact that Kerberos is out there and you may be told about it and it does work, it's probably never going to be your best option when you're dealing with HANA. The SAML allows you to log into BI with enterprise accounts, LDAP accounts, SAP accounts, and AD accounts. It allows you to schedule your reports. It allows full functionality. What it does is it sets up trust between BI and HANA, and that way there, once that trust is established, whatever your user is identified on BI, if they have a SAML alias on HANA, they're going to be allowed to do SSO. That is by far going to be a better option than the Kerberos, although we do have quite a few customers that have implemented Kerberos because that was available first. Also, another important thing is SAML does not care about your operating system. So even if your CMS is on Linux or Unix, you can still implement SAML SSO to the database because you don't have that AD integration piece. We go in there to show some of the settings, accessing the applications in the CMC, and then HANA Authentication. That's where you set up your trust. It's less work to get your HANA trust, although it is a little bit tricky to have the HANA PEM file set up properly. There's some very particular formatting with that, and that seems to be where most users make mistakes or customers make mistakes when they're setting it up. The user IDs must match between HANA and the BI system, and I believe that's case sensitive too. So you can't have a lowercase or something like that. You have to adhere to the HANA username standard. Again, like I said, it works with all of our authentication types, so it doesn't matter how you log into BI, you can still do SSO to HANA because it's based off of a trust. And when we say we're using SAML, another thing that's really important, this is a BI proprietary certificate between BI and HANA. It's not real SAML. It doesn't integrate with any other SAML application. It's essentially just like our STS to BW, except the creation and sharing of the certificate process between BI and HANA is a little bit different than the way it's set up for BW. But what we do is we create a certificate in BI, we save that certificate on HANA, and then when a user attempts to authenticate, we have to match his username and get that certificate, and then the SSO will occur automatically. And the user has to have a SAML alias on HANA, and they have to have a matching alias on BI. So it's a pretty secure SSO method if you put all the pieces in. A little bit difficult to implement in the beginning, but it's getting better as more people use it. And there's a lot of KBs out there on that. 1900023 is the one I wrote on it. I don't see it. I might have forgot to put it in the presentation. But if you do SAML SSO, it's going to be your #1 result. Supports all BI clients except Zen and A-Office. Now, A-Office is working on getting this implemented by Q4 this year. So we're hoping a new version of A-Office will be released. I think it's going to be A-Office 2.0. That should be able to take advantage of the SAML SSO to HANA.
Tim, we have a question coming from Sarah. Is there another option of SSO apart from Siteminder authentication when we use Windows AD?
The Siteminder authentication should not be used with Windows AD. Again, that's an old legacy support. I think the box may still be in the product. But when you're using Windows AD, the SSO is performed with the Java SSO libraries, formerly known as Quest Ventela. If you're not using AD for SSO, then trusted authentication, I believe, again, just applied to that too. So trusted authentication would be another option that is not actually AD dependent, but it can work with the AD plugin. For Siteminder can make use of trusted auth, but we usually do not integrate it directly with the AD plugin. That was something that was put in there a long time ago and should be coming out soon. By needing programming, Kerberos requires an Active Directory service account, so any customer that's managing the BI system would require changes to be made in the network side in their environment. There's no actual development programming that's required. Everything is written up. The KBA was shown earlier, 163.17.34. But when you say needs programming, you mean needs network team to create you a service account with options run at the command line? Yes. And okay, we'll go back to the CMC. Here's an example of setting up the HANA SAML certificate. Generate the certificate on the BI side, import it into HANA. Copy and paste. Once both systems are set up, the user can test the connection in the CMC, and then they can also go into a tool like IDT and create connections and test there as well. Import certificate into HANA, provider name, DN, issuer DN. Usually this is done on a HANA file. Okay, so let's go to the summary. User authentication against BOE with one of the mechanisms supported by BOE. BOE secures and forwards the user identity to SAP HANA with one of the following methods: username and password, the standard hard-coded user, we call that, Kerberos. So if you're using a hard-coded user, you just create a user in HANA, you create a user, or you put that user in your connection, and all users would use the same username and password, or you could create multiple connections for different users. So that's a lot of work. That's the reason why SSO is getting more and more popular for a database option. When you use Kerberos, users log into the BOE server using Active Directory. The HANA server is integrated with Active Directory, and BOE can then pass that AD user on to HANA for on-demand reporting only. And that allows you to have one connection for all your AD users. That was the reason why that solution came out in the first place. With SAML, new in 4.1, BOE acts as an identity provider, generates our proprietary SAML tickets, which we go and save in the HANA database, and it sets up a trust between the two systems. We usually secure that using SSL between BI and HANA, and it allows any user that exists in BI can use SAML to HANA for on-demand and scheduling as long as they have a SAML alias. Database credentials, this is one of the enhancements that I'm currently working with. So right now the database credentials, if you were to go into any BI user account, whether or not it's an AD, LDAP, Enterprise, they have database credentials in the user account properties. By default, they're not enabled and they're blank. And what you can do is you can choose, you can go in and you can enable and populate them with any username and password you want. And if you have a universe that's set to use database credentials, that username and password will be sent as if you had hard-coded it into the universe connection. Sometimes this solution is combined with the one on the right, where they can automatically be captured if the user manually logs in through configuration option in a plugin. So you can go into your AD or LDAP plugin and check this box that says enable and update users' data source credentials at logon time. This will synchronize the data source with the user's current logon. So if you log in with LDAP and that same LDAP username and password will allow the user to access a database, you can have the LDAP username and password automatically updated over here in the fields on the left, and then when they hit their SSO to the database, it will send the, or when they try to refresh the database, it will send those credentials to the database. Now the problem with this is there's a lot of problems with this. Number one, the credentials here from the LDAP plugin may not necessarily work with all their databases. The second problem is Microsoft, the way its connections are created using integrated security, will send the service account username and password instead of the DB username and password. This is just something that the Microsoft connection does inherently. So this option has never been super duper popular. And the third problem is that when you check this box, you absolutely cannot use SSO to BI Launchpad. You have to log in manually, and we're going to capture that username and password and store it in our database, which presents another problem for our customers. Because if you want to come into our product with EPSSO or Kerberos SSO, all this is going to do is at best it's going to populate these with junk because it can't decrypt the password. So what we're hoping in the new version of 4.1, maybe by SP5, if we're lucky, we're going to try to expose this field on the left to the BI Launchpad so that customers can go and type in their own. They can go and enable it and then type in their own database credentials, and if they hit a universe with those credentials, with that database credential set, they'll be able to automatically refresh their documents. This will allow all the users to have different database credentials and manage them themselves. It's not as good as a true SSO solution, but it's hopefully an adequate workaround, and it gets us past having to be on demand, having to be logged in all the time. So you can also use this option for scheduling. Okay, so reviewing reporting from SQL Server, Oracle, we can use Kerberos, Windows only, save credentials, all platforms, and predefine credentials, all platforms. If you're reporting off of SAP HANA, we can use our Kerberos SSO for Windows and that one version of Linux. If you're using SAML, it will work with all platforms. If you're using save credentials, it will work with all platforms. Predefined credentials, of course, will work with all platforms. If you're reporting off of BW, we have STS, which will work with all platforms, or SNC will work with all platforms and our legacy applications. Save credentials, I think actually save credentials doesn't work with BW, but I'd have to confirm that. If logging in on the BI side with SAP credentials, okay. So there is a save credentials. When you log into the BI server, we can cache your BI credentials. So it doesn't use the database credentials that we were just talking about. It caches this in another. It's not even something you can turn off. It's just automatic. And those save credentials can be used to access the database. For the most part, they don't work all the time, so they cause a lot of intermittent problems with SAP SSO, and we basically tell all of our customers to use STS and SNC if you really want, consistent SSO to work from all your applications. All right, OLAP analysis, report off Kerberos SSO, requires Windows only. Have to log in manually or with SSO. Save credentials and predefined credentials. This depends on how your analysis server is set up. Analysis goes through IIS, and you have to have your IIS be able to read these. So the setup, I think you have to use basic authentication, which isn't very secure. Reporting on NetWeaver BW is, we're going to use STS. And if we go into client tools, the information design tool is written in Java. This means that some of the Java to get SSO is not there to get SSO working. So it does not make use of web services, so it can't follow suit like LiveOffice and Analysis for Office and Quaz. So all we can do best effort with the IDT currently is we have to give it the manual login files for the KRB5 and the BSC login, and it will use the Java layer to authenticate to Active Directory. There's no SSO option in IDT. And to do that, you just modify your information design tool.ini. We have other tools that have this limitation. The report conversion tool was one. There's not many of them. Most of our tools, as long as they go to web services, we can get you in with SSO. And some of the older tools, which WebRich Planet's not older, but it's written in, I guess, C++ or whatever, can just make use of the operating system. They can just log in the OS credentials. Universe Designer would do that too. Okay, so we've reached the end of the BI4.1 series. Upgrade our user authentication and single sign-on. So we basically summarize all of our authentication methods, giving you an idea of what's going to be popular going forward, what our customers are using now, and hopefully some possibilities that we're going to implement there in the future. Are there any questions that we didn't get during the presentation? We still have a few more minutes.
Yeah, so thank you, Tim, and this is the opportunity for anyone to submit any other questions they have. And there was one from AJ Gupta where he says, again, I've used the login no SSO JSP after SP7. It does not work. It worked fine up to SP5 on Tomcat 5. Now Tomcat 7 is having issues. Any questions there? Any comments?
If that's the case, then you need to get a support case open, because they broke it in 4.1, so the possibility that they broke it in SP7 does exist, but I haven't heard any reports. And normally I deal with most of the bugs that get fixed for authentication, so I would usually at least heard about it if that were the case. So it could just be something's not working right in the deployment. It could be, but it could be a bug too, and so you have to get an engineer to go and reproduce it in-house and verify if that's really what's happening. We can fix it. We fixed it on BI4.1. Nobody even told us about it for about 2 SPs. So we were coming to release. We broke it on SP1, and we didn't really hear about it until SP2, and we fixed it on SP3. It definitely, if that's the case, we would need to have someone open a case and report the bug so we can go and check it. And again, we asked about Tomcat 7. It shouldn't. Tomcat 7, we have many people using it, and we've never seen any issue with that as far as with the log on no SSO. Or any of our SSO options for that matter. Tomcat 7 has been pretty solid.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for your attendance, and thanks very much, Tim, for presenting. A number of people asked whether this recording will be available, and yes, this webinar recording will be available in a few days' time from the SCN webinar calendar page that I showed the URL for just now in the chat window. And we'll be contacting you all soon again with email invitations for the next webinar in this series. So once again, thank you everyone, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks a lot, and thanks Tim.
Yep, anytime.